So this one's going to be a little more interesting to talk about for me. Because it was pretty freaking blah, 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 blah. It was pretty freaking clear cut what exactly was going to happen with this one. The dub got both points. Now, I made the joke that, oh yeah, it's totally going to be because of the way Dan Green delivers, that final epic, the final epic beatdown on Noah. Well, funny enough, yes and no. Uh, sorry, give me a second. That was one of my alarms going off because, I'm recording this pretty close to when I have to go to work, which is actually similar to how I did it with Courtroom Chaos. I had some other stuff I had to deal with, so that's why it actually took me a bit between that, between it. But yeah, no. So Noah's final threat. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and be perfectly blunt with you here. I don't see the nuance of Noah in the sub. I find him to be an obnoxious little shit who is, quite frankly, one of the worst fucking villains in the entire series. I'm pretty sure I said in the last one, and when I was bitching about him, that he is the third worst villain. Yeah, I stand behind that completely. You know, and I will go ahead and I will say that I find a lot of the I find the fact that Atem knows about spirit monsters to be a bit more questionable than him not knowing about them in the dub. Now, some people might balk at that because it's like, well, why? You liked that he knew about Toon World, knew a bit about Toon World, or old Slash, didn't know much, Slash didn't know much about Toon World back in, all the way back in Champion versus Creator. And that was true because that was kind of a knowledge type of thing. The problem here is that I just don't enjoy this episode. This episode is supposed to be all about Atem proving the power of bonds and everything. But I feel like the way he's depicted in the sub just kind of makes him not as engaging as he otherwise would be. Because in the sub, it's all no. He plays Seto up in the sub. Atem plays up Seto like he's his enemy, and I kind of fucking hate that angle, if I'm honest, because, right. Also, I find Noah to be far more fucking petty in the sub than he is in the dub. In the dub, it's pretty clear that, yeah, he's kind of getting sick of hearing about the cheerleading and that like he's basically just voicing the audience's disdain and for the friendship speeches at that point, right? But in the sub, he takes great pride in basically being petty and pathetic, which I get is the point. This is supposed to be us tearing Noah down and making him look to be completely pathetic, which is why that final moment with the triple burst stream or triple white lightning, depending on which version you're watching, the triple blue eyes attack is so potent and powerful. Powerful because it is Noah getting fucked over by the very dragons that he basically mocked by claiming he was superior to Seto in every way. Except the problem is that effectively his name will be stricken from the history books forever, and Seto will go on to have many, many things that will continue to have, ripple effects through two shows. Shows. everything that Seto does here in DM has ripple effects that expand beyond into GX and 5Ds. Which, if I'm not mistaken, is like 2 decades of time. I'm right. So for the next 20 years, Seto's name is going to be, famous. Is going to be famous, especially amongst tech circles, right? You know, actually, it might be 30 years, given 5Ds and stuff. But let's not argue semantics right now. Let's not argue semantics. I can look it up when we get to 5Ds, and then I can kind of go over it, right? Regardless, this duel is also another one that I admit I don't really think too fondly on outside of the final move. And man, did this watch through really cement that. Which is funny because this is actually one less episode, and it feels like you literally could have just stripped off of one more episode. Which, if that was the case, I would have easily just been like, yeah, no, I'll totally just watch that. And yada yada yada. But whatever. Also, if you're wondering why there is actually one thing that made, because obviously I prefer the graceful charity final move, the final turn in the dub. And that kind of gave part 2 the point. Okay, cool. What gave part 1 the point? Because I separate them, right? Music direction. Not that the dub nailed music direction, but that the sub epically failed. There is a song called Anger of God, or God's Anger, or Power of God. It's got like 6 different titles because Japanese pronunciations are wild. If you give me a moment, I'll actually look up the see if I've got the OST. They do actually just call it God's Anger. So yeah, obviously that is the song. That's the bum 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 bum. That song. I'm sure Future Alex has probably got it playing in the background right now, or will start playing it right now. That song is potent and powerful. Now, why do I say that the use of that song sucks? They play it. They start playing it when Noah activates Pyroclock of Destiny to get rid of swords. After he's made all these declarations about being God, the creator god of this virtual world. I hate that. Because it's one thing to imply that he's got a god complex, and it's another thing to basically you might as well just have Light Yagami's voice come out of his lips and say, "I am the god of the new world," for all the fucking relevance it has, And yet that use of that voice clip would actually be more relevant than putting the fucking God's Anger. Because at least then you can say, well, Light Yagami was never actually a god, he was a false god, right? If a certain gamma powered superhero were to flail him around, he would call him a puny god. But yeah, no. Actually, what's funny is Beauty God fits Noah too. Now that I'm thinking about it, he's kind of short. anyways, I'm just delaying the inevitable. I didn't like this episode. This was a D rank episode, or sorry, C rank episode. And again, that's mostly because of the dub. Because again, you expect him to be effectively a parody, but the problem is that he's that much of a goddamn parody in this episode in the sub. So what the fuck is the difference? He still has the same laughing at people's pain. He still has the fucking temper tantrums. And honestly, I like that Atem just says the quiet part out loud in the dub. You've been exposed for the scared child you are. No, there's gotta be something I can do. Right? I also prefer, you know, I always also prefer, you Tem declaring that this madness is finally over. Now, granted, we've got about we've still got 3 episodes left before this madness is truly over, and we haven't even gotten to my favorite frickin' duel in the entire saga. But yeah, ugh. But yeah, I guess I should go over the duel. I guess I should go over the duel because I really want to talk about that final bit last, and I've got nothing. I've got nothing to really say about Noah. There are some interesting plot points in the dub specifically. Uh, there's Noah being like, "How dare you call me a cheater?" And my note is just like, "You are a fucking cheater." Like seriously, if you weren't using Mokuba as a human shield, as I bitched about last week, you would have lost, and you fucking know that. I'm still angry at this piece of shit. There is one thing I do like though. Noah asks if Atem thinks he's superior because he has, bonds with his friends and everything. Atem does not claim that he is superior. He claims that he is human. I like that distinction. That distinction is very good. Very good. In fact, a lot of the dialogue I feel is actually, as weird as this might sound, I find the dialogue better in the dub. Because in the dub, it's a lot of, we believe in you, Yugi. Yugi, oh, he's gonna win, yada, 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 right? Right? And, and Noah being so dismissive. Because the idea is supposed to be he's supposed to be in denial of the power of bonds, right? Well, then that actually makes sense. As for somebody being in denial of the power of bonds, it would make sense for him to be an asshole and say, the only thing I need to know about friendship is how to destroy it. Because he's in denial. He's never had a real friend before. And that's supposed to be how he is. In the sub, he's just a generic sadistic fucktard that takes pleasure in other people's suffering. Which is just, go fuck yourself, Elf, at that point. You are a fucking piece of shit that needs to just die. And thank God, spoiler alerts for the end of the arc, you actually will fucking die. Along with the true villain of the fucking arc, who will get the full reveal of next week. Like I even had and that's the other thing Noah keeps fricking doing, right? I actually wrote that as cheat 3, by the way. All the threats and the petty attacks he's pulling, right? As my note just before that it, states, respect is earned, not given away. You know, because I do agree with Atem that it's like, yeah, it's unfair that you got screwed over, but that's no excuse for the way you've been fucking treating us since we got here. Never mind the fact that you hijacked our aircraft, asshole. Never mind the fact that if you do fuck us over, there's a homicidal maniac on the blimp that you're gonna have to fucking deal with. So have fun with that, asshole. Like, I'm sorry, but that's the part that just drives me insane. There's no throne, there's no version of this where Noah doesn't get fucked over because he doesn't know about the Winged Dragon of Raw's powers. And the Winged Dragon of Raw borderlines on a Gary Stu card at this point. Like, there's a reason why they will have to come up with excuses for the Egyptian god cards to not be used for the next 2 arcs. Admittedly, one is a legit reason, and one is actually just an excuse of I'm not using them. You know, Pyramid of Light doesn't count, because obviously he uses them there, but that's beside the point. Also, is it just me or is the pacing issues back with this one? You know? So Noah's constantly turning his friends into statues. Statues. I guess let's talk about some of the shit that makes some of the dialogue that just annoys the piss out of me. The first one that I've already said, destined to be enemies angle that the sub takes. I don't like that. Destined to battle. There's a difference between destined to fight and destined to be enemies. I know some people kind of interpret in the Mega Man X franchise, for example, that X and Zero are destined to do battle, and that makes everything feel like it's destined to be enemies. But that's not necessarily the case. In fact, X5 literally has a scenario where yes, it's X versus Zero, but for different reasons, rather than just one or the other is evil. The end, which is just stupid. Then there's Noah's logic right at the beginning in the sub, because he says that Yugi and Kaiba's decks are incompatible because Kaiba has because Seto has a power deck and Yugi's is a strategy deck. I don't think the writers of this. I don't think the writers of this episode would understand a fucking thing about the compatibility of strategy and power, or even really fully know how to play this fucking game. Yes, a deck needs a flow, but here's the thing: strategy style and power style clashing. Have you heard of spells and traps before or episode? Because you kind of use them all over the place. Like, fuck. I mean, you could say that Yugi's style lacks power, and that's why it doesn't flow properly. But that's not what Noah says. What Noah says is that Yugi's deck and the decks specifically are not compatible. Not the styles are incompatible. The decks specifically. Which I hate to tell you this, Noah, but double duel, double duel, a duel with darts hurts, and I'm feeling like I'm missing one here. Here, all basically prove this to be bullshit, completely. Also, Noah claims that he would let hints at the fact that he would let Yugi change deck masters. And he says, I don't need to in the sub. Atem says, I don't need to in the sub. I'm so glad the dub excised that line. No, I mean that sincerely. I'm glad the dub excised that line. Because I like it symbolically. Again, the idea is supposed to be Yugi takes over. It's only a courtesy that both players are allowed to refresh their decks, right? There's one line I do like in the sub though, and it's from Atem. If there's even a 1% chance for victory, I will believe in my deck. That's a good line. That's a good line. Oh, and when Nutrient Z shows up in the sub, Noah declares victory, even though you can clearly hear Atem say, "I activate my trap." Doi. Ugh. And I'll get to that note later. And I'll get to that note at the end. So, alright, let's talk about the duel, shall we? So, I think he may have shown up at some point before, but Obnoxious Celtic Guardian, this is where we really get to show off Obnoxious Celtic Guardian, which is cool. This is where spirit monsters introduced. It's including Yatagarasu. Now, I thought about whether or not I want to talk about about the ban list here or when Chaos Emperor Dragon shows up for the first time. And I have ultimately decided it's going to be when Chaos Emperor Dragon shows. Because Yatagarasu doesn't do anything in this duel. Literally. Because of Obnoxious Celtic Guardian, Yatagarasu does nothing. Okay. So, Noah keeps increasing his life points. Ainz dodges Cyberjar with the final Deckmaster ability. Then during the attack that ends part 1 on Karibo with Yamato Dragon, seriously, why why did you have Karibo out there? Just any other monster. Ugh. Anyways. So Nutrient Z, one of my personal favorite trap cards, is used. Really like Nutrient Z. Nutrient Z is cool. Really like it. And useful. Then Inaba White Rabbit comes out and starts smacking Yugi directly. Heckly. Which actually gets screwed over twice, once by Dark Renewal and once by card destruction, which is actually really cool. Gets all 3 of his magicians out, Dark Magician Girl, and Magician Black Chaos, which gets immediately screwed over because, of course. Ugh. And then Atem in the sub is saying, "Oh, it's impossible. I can't do this. Blah 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 blah." I prefer Noah taunting him and then Yugi coming in and saying, "You're not alone. I'm still here." There's just something symbolic of that, especially given the Doma arc, right? So very much prefer the "You're Not Alone" scene with the room with the recent memories. I prefer Kaiba's encouragement over Seto's. Seto's get back up and fight. Right? There's just something about the nature of it that I just feel like it's like, are you seriously throwing in the towel, right? Because it's like, no, don't throw in the towel. Get up and fight, right? So then the final turn comes in, and Yugi activates Card of Sanctity to draw 6 cards. Now, what's funny is that this move literally only requires 5 of the cards. The 6th card is only necessary because Battle City rules, because he draws Monster Reborn, 2 Blue Eyes, Polymerization, Defusion, and Quick Attack. So Monster Reborn's Blue Eyes, the first Blue Eyes, fuses it with with the 2 in his hand via polymerization. Blue Eyes Ultimate gets rid of Hinokagasuchi. Defusion then splits it into the 3 Blue Eyes. The 3 Blue Eyes blast it with triple White Lightning. This madness is finally over. And the way Hey, Yugi says, has Blue Eyes White Dragon's attack wipe him out is just beautifully said in the dub. Because you can feel Dan Green puts a lot of rage into that line. I don't hate Atem's Japanese voice actor. I really don't. I think he does a really good job and can display a lot of anger. He just doesn't in the sub with that final attack. If there's ever a moment that requires somebody to be pissed off, it's when you're declaring the final attack of this duel. Cool. When you're declaring triple burst stream. I kind of wish I almost kind of wish that she had, I almost kind of wish he had said something, something even more badass, kind of like he did in season 1 when he defeated Ghost Kaiba, but whatever. I will give the sub this much. The use of God's anger for that scene is a lot better because Blue Eyes is supposed to be, on par with the gods. And that's fitting in every capacity. With Noah, you just have to ask, what the fuck were they drunk on? And when they wrote, when they edited this thing, you know. And that's it. That is it for the Deckmaster duels. They are done now. The next one won't be a Deckmaster duel. Which is probably partly why I like it, because then there's no stupid shenanigans bullshit. But that's actually kind of what I hate about this, about both this and the Kaiba version of this duel. It's shenanigans the duel. And I'm kind of sick of it. I'm kind of sick of the shenanigans, and yet there's going to be more shenanigans in season 4. Ugh. I kind of get what they were trying to go for with this one from a meta perspective, but I don't think it worked. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it was just like, okay, this needs to go the fuck away. And the Deckmaster system also kind of caused issues, but I'll leave that alone. But I've already bitched about that as we've gone through. God, just 2 videos left. Just 2 videos left, and I will finally, mercifully, be on the final, on the home stretch. Finally. Just 2 more. The incredibly obvious true villain reveals himself next week. See you there. Blue Wolf Alex the Lore Walker signing out. Have a good one. Dan Green saying wipe him out for the win. I'll see you next time. Duel standby.